Eesh. I really should invest in a hairbrush. Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to the Morning Bible. Welcome. I'm going to mute my laptop actually. Before we begin, I hope you're all good. I am good. We are in Luke chapter 21. Once again today, we're going to be in the second part of sort of our three-part breakdown of the rest of this chapter. Yesterday, if you remember, Jesus sort of foretells the destruction of the temple. He looks at these big stones that they've got there, that are these, I think they're like 570 tons, massive stones. And he's saying not one of these is going to be left on top of the other. The whole temple is going to be destroyed. And then he goes on to say, actually, it's going to be much bigger than that. Nations are going to be fighting nations, kingdoms against kingdoms, and all of the Christians around the world will be persecuted. All of Jesus' followers will be persecuted for what they believe. Some of them will be put to death, they'll be interrogated, taken away from their families. But the thread that he has running throughout it is do not be terrified, because he promises at the end of that, not a hair on your head will perish, by your endurance you will gain your lives. So there's this hope that comes even through all this destruction, that actually God has a plan through all of it, and God is rescuing the world through these things. And so we're on to another bit today. So this kind of actually follows a similar pattern to yesterday, whereas first Jesus talking about the destruction of a physical, geographical location, and then going on to talk about actually what the second coming is going to look like. So let's jump into it. From verse 20, chapter 21, Jesus says, "But when you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, then know that its desolation has come near. Then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains, and let those who are inside the city depart, and let not those who are out in the country enter it. For these are days of vengeance, to fulfill all that is written. Alas, for women who are pregnant, and for those who are nursing infants on those days. For there will be a great distress upon the earth and wrath against this people. They will fall by the edge of the sword and be led captive among all nations, and Jerusalem will be trampled underfoot by the Gentiles, until the times of the Gentiles are fulfilled." So there's a key line in here, which is to fulfill all that is written. So essentially Jesus is saying, look, this isn't going to be a random act. This isn't just sort of unforetold sort of destruction and chaos for the sake of having chaos. This is something that has been written. The book of Isaiah has quite a lot on it. I haven't prepared any choice quotes for today for us to compare to, because we've got quite a lot of passage to get through. But Isaiah talks a lot about sort of this coming destruction. There are various other sort of prophets that raise this, and so there is a precedent in Scripture that needs to be fulfilled. And there's a time of judgment and punishment that needs to be fulfilled. We've talked about before how while God is a loving God, a redempting God, a forgiving God, a really good God, he is a just God at the same time. And justice requires some level of rebalance, some level of putting things that are out of balance back into balance. And it's often very difficult to do that without ruffling some feathers. Obviously, this is quite very ruffled feathers, but yeah, there's still a sense of woe that comes through in this. So in verse 23, Jesus says, "Alas for women who are pregnant, and for those who are nursing infants in those days." So the notes in my Bible actually say a really sort of nice way of phrasing this, in that what is usually a blessing, what's usually such a wonderful thing, having kids, will actually become something that's quite difficult. And quite scary, and so Jesus says, "Alas for these people." You know, his heart goes out to these people. It isn't a cold, uncaring thing. It's like, oh, it's their fault. They decide to have kids around here. Jesus is sad by this. He's heartbroken by this. But scriptures have to be fulfilled, which is a theme we'll see continuing when Jesus goes to the cross soon. There's while Jesus is still saddened by a lot of things that happen, a lot of parts of God's plan, he recognises there is something that needs to be fulfilled. There is something that needs to be hit. There needs to be a period of difficulty and challenge in order to get into God's kingdom, in order to get God's plan into fruition. And so this, it talks about Jerusalem specifically, right? This is talking about the city of Jerusalem being surrounded by armies. This actually happened. back in AD 70, so sort of a few decades after Jesus is put to death and then raised to heaven. A few decades after that, the Roman armies actually surrounded Jerusalem to take it, and there have been uprisings from Jewish communities within Jerusalem, and so the Romans weren't very happy, and they decided to just sack the whole city. Basically, they destroyed the temple, and they destroyed tons of other history, culture within the city, and basically sieged it. They sieged it for about 4 months before going in to destroy all the parts of it. And so this is stuff that's happened. And so while this passage is talking about a specific event in history that's already happened, it's kind of mimetic, where it's going and extending out to a wider message of what is to come in the future. The word mimetic, by the way, is like if you refer to one thing to describe a whole. So if you talk about the White House, for example, you're not talking about the building itself, you're talking about the administration, sort of the president, all of the staff, that kind of thing. And so it's a similar thing here. I mean, in my own reading, it's a similar thing here. That Jesus talking about Jerusalem is sort of talking about the siege to the Judeo-Christian community as a whole. But there's a bit more passage to get through, so let's keep reading. This is where it kind of shifts, and Jesus isn't talking specifically about Jerusalem anymore. He's talking about his own second coming, and so we get sort of some clues of what it's going to look like when Jesus comes again to save us. He says, "And there will be signs in sun and moon and stars, and on the earth distress of nations in perplexity because of the roaring of the sea and the waves. People fainting with fear and with foreboding of what is coming on the world. For the powers of the heavens will be shaken." So this is sort of the build-up to Jesus' arrival, right? So it isn't just something that's sort of a social movement. It isn't sort of how he came in this period, where he's born in very humble circumstances. And there's the star that people follow, but Jesus just sort of lives a normal life for his first sort of 30 years, and then sort of begins teaching and slowly builds his following, and is selective with where he goes and who he speaks to. This second coming is going to be very different to that. We see there'll be signs in the sun and moon and stars. So all of the night sky, there will be signs in that. There will be massive change. There'll be something that points to Jesus, right? A sign isn't just, oh, that's weird over there, and then Jesus rocks up. A sign is something that actively indicates Jesus will be coming. So we don't actually know what that looks like, but if it's enough for us to look at the sky and go, oh, Jesus is coming, then that's going to be quite a big change, and quite a clear change. And on the earth distress and nations in perplexity because of the roaring of the sea and the waves. So the ocean itself is going to be roaring, it's going to be changing. People fainting with fear and with foreboding of what is coming on the world, for the powers of the heavens will be shaken. So when it talks about heavens here, it's talking about sort of above us, the heavens above us. They're going to be shaken, things are going to be shaken, things are going to be different. It's going to be impossible to sort of look at everything that's going on and think that it's normal, to think that nothing's changing. It's going to be so clear that something huge is coming. Which is obviously quite a marked change from Jesus' coming here, but big changes. It will be impossible to kind of ignore. And then from verse 27 it says, "And then we will see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and great glory." So as if it wasn't sort of clear enough what was going on already, we now get this cloud with Jesus in it. Again, we don't know the specifics. We don't know if he'll be sort of this giant or like made out of cloud, or we don't know. We know that he's going to be coming on a cloud. There's going to be this cloud with Jesus in it. And that's going to be, for all to see. It's right there in the sky. You can just look up and see him. With great power and great glory. And when these things begin to take place, straighten up and raise your heads, because your redemption is drawing near. So this is the thing that we saw yesterday, where it talks about not a hair on your head will be harmed. We see all this tumultuous stuff. We see all this crazy world being shaken up, destruction of Jerusalem, everything's gone crazy. But Jesus appears on the cloud, and the passage says, raise your head up. It says, straighten up, stand up straight, be confident, be strong, be assertive, believe. and raise your head and see Jesus. Look up at him, keep your eyes on him. Don't look at the world around you as everything's changing, as everything's being shaken up. Look at Jesus as he makes his way towards you, because your redemption is drawing near. That's like a guarantee. The redemption is a guarantee. If you turn to Jesus, if you come to Jesus, then that redemption that he brings is for you specifically. So yeah, it's a good passage. It's a really good passage. Like I said, we don't know quite what the end of the world is going to look like, because we're going off these descriptions, and these descriptions don't tell us, like, he's going to arrive here on this day and this time, and it's going to look like this, and here's a picture and a diagram of. It's just we have these pointers, but these pointers make it very clear that, like, we're not going to miss it. Jesus isn't going to come down and we'll be like, oh, I missed that. That's not going to happen. It's going to be so abundantly clear in all of nature and everything around us. And so yeah, and when he does, he'll bring goodness, he'll bring peace, he'll bring redemption. That's something that's worth getting excited for. So yeah, I hope you all have a wonderful day. I'll see you all tomorrow for the end of chapter 21. Yeah, over and out. Bye bye bye.